The advent of the horseless carriage laid the foundation for America's love affair with the automobile. Electric cars have been with us since very early on, almost since the very beginning. Interestingly to me, the first electric car in America was created by a gentleman named William Morrison. Now I stood up and took note when I read that because this is also the name of my grandfather and the name of my brother, William Morrison. And I wonder if I'm related to him somehow. I'll have to check that out, do some checking. Anyways, Mr. Morrison produced his electric car in 1891, and it reached an astronomical speed of 14 miles per hour and could accommodate 6 passengers. Now when I say, it sounded sort of sarcastic that I said 14 miles an hour, but when you consider that this was at the beginning and people prior to this were used to the horseless carriage, which didn't reach anywhere near those speeds. So 14 miles an hour to these people was indeed fast. At the beginning of the 20th century, a full 40% of U.S. cars on the road were EVs, electric vehicles. There were advantages to the EV as they are now called, and they were a smooth ride, a quiet ride, unlike steam and gas-powered vehicles. Additionally, they were fairly easy to drive and to maneuver. Unlike gas-powered cars that needed to be cranked by hand, the EV did not. They really seemed to be the car of choice in the early days. Hybrids that used both electric and gas were early arrivals also. The Woods Motor Vehicle Company produced an early hybrid which used both gas and electric. Now, in my opinion, the interest for EVs did not last for 2 specific reasons. First, they could not go more than what I spoke of a moment ago, 14 miles an hour. And also the batteries did not allow for long trips, and they were mostly used for local traffic. And that would be a great hindrance to anybody when considering purchasing an electric vehicle. But there were charging stations, but General Electric at the beginning of the 20th century built the Electrant that brought street charging to New York City. They could also be charged at dealerships where they were purchased, and a little bit later on units were offered to charge at home if you had electricity at home, because a lot of people at that early time, didn't have electricity. The rural people, electricity was just, it just was not there. It came in later, so they couldn't have charged them at home. But the popularity of the EV floundered, and the internal combustion engine took over the market. Still, the EV lingered in the background, and here are a number of photos I'm going to show you right now of, for example, the Peel Trident Mini EV town car. And it's pretty cool looking, as you can see. The British government requested the EV to help solve the problem of smog. Batteries made up over half of the EV's 500-pound weight, and in many ways it was very futuristic in appearance. So climatically, they have I would like to say they have a very low impact on the climate, but I don't know that that's true, because now to produce the electricity in the chargers to charge your car is the energy that you're able to take from the charger somehow along the line has either got a connection to coal or gas for the operation and the production of electricity. So I'm not sure that it's that great for the climate, but it was certainly better than the pollution from internal combustion. So as I said, their popularity floundered and the internal combustion engine took over the market. Still, the EV lingered in the background. Now, I'm going to be showing you here a series of pictures that are early EVs. But one thing that got things going is that the British government requested the EV to be produced to help solve the problem of smog. And you can easily see on the surface where it looks like that would be true. It's not millions of cars belching out, toxic emissions. But again, there had to be a footprint left as electricity was being produced to charge the cars with. So anyways, the British government ordered them up, and batteries made up, though, over half of the EV's 500-pound weight. And in many ways, it was very futuristic in appearance, a cool-looking car. Now, the photograph shows an EV, again from the 1960s, which was built by John Hoke. And this EV could breeze along at 35 miles an hour, which was a considerable improvement, but wasn't enough improvement for the average driver that would be going on trips or for working for business. It just still wasn't enough miles per hour. But it was built for under $1,000 and cost only about a half a cent a mile to run, and went 20 miles between charges. Now that's not very much. That's not very much. Where I lived, I used to take the bus from Tawas to Oscoda and back, which is a 15-mile trip one way. This 1960s car would not even make it there, but it would make it only about not even halfway back before you'd have to charge it probably for 24 hours. So it had its drawbacks even in the 1960s. But in 1966, a new battery was developed by Ford Motors. And this gave a bit of a jolt to Detroit and to the petroleum industry. You see, it brought to mind a prediction of Thomas Edison in 1905. Mr. Edison said, "If you continue to produce your present quality of the electric automobiles, the gas buggy will not stand a chance." However, to the museums, the Horseless Carriage, was responsible for their decline because they also began following the air so badly. But the scientists claimed we would see mass asphyxiation in about 50 years. Now, of course, and thankfully, that didn't take place. But again, today, climate alarmists are sounding off loudly, and that our use of oil will be the doom of all of us. And it could be. I don't know. The air here in Saginaw is still clean and pleasant enough to breathe. So I don't know. But here in the States, while serving to send inflation sky high, we have a president I refer to lovingly as President Potato Head, that has decimated oil production in our country. And I believe that he's done this with his cronies so that the EV would take off and satisfy the climate alarmists. An article in my collection about EVs and published in October 1966 is very informative. Here's what the uncredited author had to say, and he wrote, "Aware of the bad publicity that resulted when car makers ignored this year's safety controversy, Ford has moved to head off the worsening controversy over pollution by announcing it could be in the EV business in 10 years. And, quote, repeat line.
Majority writes, and I quote, "Women," it's a quote now from the majority, "women are not without electoral or political power. It is noteworthy that the percentage of women who register to vote and cast a ballot is consistently higher than the percentage of the men who do so." End of quote. Repeat the line. Women...
I'm sorry. I had a President Biden, or excuse me, Brandon moment. Repeat last line, teleprompter. If you didn't see that on the news, it's kind of interesting. The writer reasoned that fear of mass death would be effective enough to spur action. However, that fear factor did not manifest itself as was hoped by the people promoting the EVs. Now, in 1966, the EV was potentially simpler, much far cheaper, and far more efficient. And I feel confident that new breeds of EVs will will not be more simple than a gas car, simply because modern man must computerize everything. And like today, automobiles, any new EV will basically be a computer on wheels, and thus ensuring that the industry can clean up on repairs and replacement parts. Ka-ching. Now in 1966, again, General Motors, Chrysler, General Dynamics, and Westinghouse were developing their own EVs. Well, would they really be more simple? Basically, all that was really required would be a tiny motor connected next to each wheel. There would be no longer a need for radiators, clutches, transmissions, carburetors, pistons, cylinders, gas tanks, mufflers, or exhaust pipes. Transmissions, no, that there would still be the need, because you have to have gearing to go forward and backward. So there would be a simple type of gearing. But basically it would be a simpler machine, unless, as I said, it was computerized. So why didn't the EVs take off in the 1960s? The battery was still the problem. You could only go about 20 miles on a charge, and that was charging, and the battery Ford was working on, again in 1966, was lighter and could store more power, resulting in 134 miles per charge. A huge improvement, but still not enough to seal the deal. 134 miles sounds like a drop in the bucket compared to what we're used to being able to travel today. It's really not very far. And the Ford battery had a big disadvantage in that it needed to reach 500 degrees in order for it to function. If it were to break open in an accident, the mixture would explode. Again, the author in the 1966 article wrote, "The biggest breakthrough will come when cars are fitted out with fuel cells." Now, unlike other batteries, the fuel cell produces energy by converting fuel energy into electrical energy. Since it does not store the charge, it would continue to produce energy as long as oxygen and fuel, usually hydrogen, was supplied. Fuel cells could give a car a 300-mile range, more than a tank of gas could do. So a $300 range on an EV would be, in my book, acceptable. It still would limit your ability to, like, do a trip from Michigan to Florida, which I've done in a day and a half. It would limit your ability to do that, because you'd be charging every 300 miles, and it would take a long time to get to your destination. So anyways, I continue. Cars were pretty much the thing of dreams, and I believe that in part it is due not just to the mile limitation and the limitations of the battery itself. It was due in part to money. To make a big change, the automakers that were established already in the 1960s would have to contend with the impact of billions of dollars of equipment alterations, and probably none of them were looking at that in a really pretty frame of thought. It was a lot of money, and it would cost them, whereas they were set up to do the internal combustion engine car. To do a switchover like this would be astronomical. Would have been then, would be now. So I must admit to not knowing a great deal about EVs. As you can probably tell, I think they're fascinating. I love cars. I'm not mechanically inclined, but I love the style of cars, how they're made, and what they can do. But it would seem the only thing that would set the EV market on fire would be, as the British did many, many years before, if our government mandated a phase out of gas burners, and that would have a general all-around effect on every American living at the time. And I believe that's what the Biden administration is working towards. Well, they are. I mean, they've come out and said it. Working towards the elimination of gas-consuming vehicles and completely going over to electric vehicles. So, but that's not a well-thought-out plan. But then little from that administration is thought out well. Looking at the variety of EVs on the market today, I would say interest likely is at an all-time high. The first one that comes to mind is the Tesla, though its safety record seems to be, or seems to leave a lot to be desired. There are many reports of them bursting into flames. And, brief outline search shows many EVs available to the public today, though. And these include the Fiat 500, Mercedes-Benz EQS, Jaguar I-Pace, Volkswagen IO.4, BMW small i4, Kia EV6, Ford Mustang Mach-E, Honda E, Audi e-tron GT, and the Porsche Taycan, yeah. And there are lots more. The one that bothers me is the electric Mustang, because it doesn't have that classic Mustang look. Even today, the gas-powered Mustangs look, you can see their evolution from when they came out in the 1960s to now. You can still tell it's a Mustang. This car, as you can see in the picture, other than having the horse on the front, you'd be hard-pressed to tell that it was a Mustang at all. Charging the batteries quickly needs a lot of work also. It takes a lot longer than going to pumping, or a lot longer than pumping a tank of gas. I am wondering, with the extreme rise in gas prices, thanks to liberal Looney Brandon, might make the modern breed of EVs take off stronger. Certainly in California, gas is $7 a gallon. Here it's just a shade under it's over $4 a gallon, I should say. And it might make the prospect of owning an EV something that more people would do that they wouldn't have really considered before. But I don't think Americans or anybody wants something shoved down their throat. The internal combustion engine, with the regulations and rules that are in place, produces really low emissions. So, it's kind of a strange thing there that is being done to the automobile industry today. I lived through one of the biggest changes in modern times of the automobile industry from in the 1970s, when you just, if you bought a foreign car, you didn't park in my dad's driveway. And a lot of people were like that. Buy American, buy American, buy American. Support America. And a lot of people didn't listen, unfortunately. But that was a huge change. And that cost the automobile industry here in the United States much, until they adapted to the changes that were taking place. Well, that's what I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this briefly at the EV, the electric vehicle. Yeah, we're going to see a lot more of them, I believe, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I hope they get the speed a little bit faster. I hope they have to get the range a lot more, and they need to make the battery safer. And when that's done, I think a lot more people will consider the electric vehicle. Right now, approximately, from what I read, $30,000 to $35,000. So, anyways, again, that's all I got for you. I hope that you enjoyed this. I enjoyed this. Like I said, I love cars. So, God bless each and every one of you. I love you all, my dear friends, and I will see you again very soon. God willing.